From the mind of the godfather of manga, Osamu Tezuka, came 1984's Bagi, the Mighty Monster of Nature.
そう、やっぱりわかったわね。嬉しいわ。
The story of a mountain lion turned Catwoman, who was the product of science by combining her DNA with that of a human's. These experiments, however, came with consequences, as animals like her could develop supernatural abilities. She had super agility and the power to control others with hypnosis. With only one true friend named Ryosuke Ishigami, named Ryo for short, all she wanted to do was live in peace in a world that only saw her as a monster. Bagi was voiced by Saeko Shimazu in Japan, as the film never received an English dub in the United States. In the story, Ryo's mother, Yoko Ishigami, was the lead scientist in a laboratory called the Super Life Center. They specialized in genetic transferring. Not only did they create many different types of plants, but they created many different types of strange animals. One day the lab had an incident when an earthquake struck, allowing 15 of the genetic experimented animals to escape, one of which was a newborn cub Bagi being carried out by her mother. Fearing what the animals could do, Yoko ordered they all be hunted down and killed. Bagi's mother hides her and is eventually shot dead, leaving the cub the only one left that escapes. Yoko's husband, however, finds her and brings her home to their then 6-year-old son Ryo as a gift after his visit to the lab, thinking she was a stray kitten. Even as a cub, Bagi was unusual for some to confuse as a stray cat, as she was already showing signs of high intelligence. From mimicking Ryo, eating unusual foods, reading books, and even requesting sauce be put on her fish. At some point, she became fatally ill. Ryo, who had grown to really love her, refused to simply let her die, and helped nurse her back to health. And from there, her intelligence only grew, when she began standing on 2 legs, mimicking the dance moves from the TV, and started spelling her own name. But when she started getting unusually big and too unusual for those that didn't know what to make of her, Bagi, not wanting to cause Ryo any trouble, ran away from home.
あなたに迷惑がかかると思って家出し
9 years later, now at 15, Ryo became a troubled kid and started running with a biker gang. One night on the highway, Bagi watching from a distance re-enters his life, but not before the gang leader decides to harass her when she runs away, thinking she's an innocent woman. After invoking her wrath, he is rewarded with her claws in his face. From there, she would begin hunting down and badly injuring the rest of the gang. Those who took off on bite would not be fast enough to escape her. None would be spared, none excluding Ryo, who she left alone. Not knowing when to stop, the leader drags him and 2 other members not badly maimed to the spot he believed Bagi stayed to get some revenge. They wait until late into the night for her. At some point, the leader orders Ryo to go outside and scout for her, trying to use him as bait. She instead bursts through the floor and deals with the remaining 3 while he is outside. This time, however, it's suggested that she attacks and kills them. By the time he raced back, a big set of eyes was looking at him from the doorway. Eventually, Bagi called him by name and stepped into the light, finally unveiling herself to him. Ryo races home in terror on his motorcycle, but you can't escape a creature that can chase motorcycles and already knows where you live. It was now up to Bagi to keep him calm and convince him she was the same little kitten from 9 years ago. She willingly bends over and wraps her tail around him to remind him of her familiar scent.
あなたはいつも
After the flashback to where she was first brought to him, she tells him it was a lonely 9 years, as she searched all over for others like her and couldn't find any. She now had a burning desire to figure out what she was, and while Ryo didn't know either, he at least knew where his dad found her. After driving what appeared to be a long distance, they stop at a convenience store. When Ryo goes in seeking answers, Bagi decides to show off more of her abilities and scares off a stray dog. The 2 finally make it outside the gates of the Super Life Center. After using the motorcycle to blow out the power to the security fence, with Ryo on her back, Bagi jumps over it and makes a run for it. With her incredible speed, she finds herself dodging oncoming laser fire, suffering 2 cuts on her paw and leg. When Ryo realized they were infrared, he has her stop to cease the fire. That's where she came up with the plan of digging the rest of the way to the front entrance. And when they couldn't get through the front, with Ryo on her back once again, Bagi jumps onto the ledge of a building and breaks in a window. From there, they both witnessed the horrors of the laboratory and its experiments on animals, and soon dealt with the mutant greenhouse plants, only for the alarm to sound and find themselves pursued by security. Closed in with no escape, Bagi would put her abilities to work, racing along the walls dodging gunfire until she reached the first set of guards and took them out. Just as more came, she would pass a gun to Rio, who then used it to switch out the lights. They then used the darkness to make their silent escape. They make it all the way to the chief himself, who was head of the Super Life Center with no more interruptions. When Rio asks for his mother, he is told she left for South America yesterday in the Republic of Monaca because of an invitation from the Cucaracha Research Lab. After Baggy stops the chief from calling for help and smashes his speaker in case he tries again, he is then forced to tell the two the story of what happened 9 years ago. And the truth of Baggy being intended to be killed devastates her. She wanted to live like everyone else.
さあ所長さん、私帰ってきたわよ。殺すなら殺してみたらどう？私死なないわ。絶対生き延びてみせるわ。私だって生きる権利があるのよ。
Before the chief could kill her himself, she puts him under hypnosis and decides to toy with him a little. She then forces him to write a note stating Rio will be traveling to South America with the remaining animal from 9 years ago, and his people would be assisting. Witnessing this power of hers, before boarding the plane, Rio makes Baggy promise not to harm his mother in any way. While in the cargo bay of the plane, some of the cactus broke from his box and began attacking Baggy. Fighting back as best she could, it wasn't long before she was overwhelmed, being strangled, and having her mouth forced closed. Rio checking in on her makes it just in time to kill the plants and allow her to finally breathe again before she is murdered. The cactus being in the cargo turned out to be yet another attempt on Baggy's life ordered by the chief. One more attempt comes when the floor is open beneath them and they get dropped from the plane to fall to their death. With fast thinking from Baggy, she uses a sheet and the remains of the cactuses to create a parachute for the both of them, but would still be forced to land in the river for safety. Rio ends up rushed away with the tide and ends up badly injured. Baggy ends up tending to his wounds in the jungle when he was unconscious for 4 days, keeping them clean by licking them. While eating the snake that hijacked their fish, she gets excited hearing Rio wanted her back home so they could be one big happy family again, and decided to show off a dress she made while he was still out of it. She soon puts on a performance for him. It was the same dance steps she memorized from the TV show she watched as a cub. And even as the rain came down, it didn't bother her, as she was so overjoyed, all she wanted to do was dance. They would spend one more night together in the jungle. By morning, when a truck is driving down the road, Baggy hypnotizes the driver and passenger so they could hitch a ride. They eventually get pulled over by Imperial guards, claiming to be looking for rebels. Baggy is then forced to prove she is a circus line by jumping through a flaming hoop 30 meters long, or else they would be executed. Baggy jumps through the burning hoops and succeeds by coming out unharmed. But it turned out her perfect performance apparently gave them away when she is tranquilized and Rio is knocked out. Yoko Ishigami, now holding Baggy captive, didn't listen to her son and remained determined to finally destroy Baggy like the rest of the escaped experimented animals. In the midst of her cruel claims towards her, Yoko tells her that her human intelligence was fading and soon would be an ordinary beast. Baggy pleads to her to stop the experiments, but she refuses to listen, believing she is doing what is right.
誰に向かってそんな口を聞くのよ。愚かしい。私は創造主だ。新しい生き物をこの世に作り出しているのだ。お前は
However, her plans soon fall apart when the rice created for feeding the starving citizens turned out to be highly poisonous and kills the animals it was fed to. The president of Monaco, on the other hand, wanted the rice to kill out the rebels who were opposing him. In fact, he saw world domination using it, but Yoko refused to help in his plans. Refusing to go home, refusing to listen to her husband, refusing to listen to her son, refusing to listen to Baggy, and now refusing to listen to the president, Yoko Ishigami. She refuses. But this time, it was about to cost her life. Rio in the meantime makes it to the room holding Baggy, who needed glue remover to be freed from the table. She was now showing signs of her intelligence slipping. She could barely talk and could barely stand on 2 legs. That wouldn't be enough to stop her from defending Rio from an attack from a man who was holding him in custody. Playing dead at an elevator coming towards their direction, she casts hypnosis on the 2 scientists trying to figure out what she was. They are then used to take her and Rio to the floor Yoko was being held. Rio tells Baggy to help his mother, but reminds her not to harm her in any way. She then makes a request of her own and has him stroke her throat one more time, before licking his face. She requested this of him because she likely figured she wasn't going to be herself for much longer. She loses control of her human intelligence right in front of Yoko, but Baggy maintained just enough awareness to honor her request and race off with the deadly rice ball. Yoko is then horribly maimed off screen by vicious attack dogs. Rio arrives in time only to see Baggy running off and seeing his mother dying of her injuries. Before she could tell him what happened, she passes away, and he carries a false hatred for Bagi, who he thinks killed his mother. He stays in South America for the next 5 years getting trained to have his revenge on her. Now at the age of 20, where the story had officially started, the government approached him out of a request to take Bagi out, because it was believed she was the monster who was terrorizing and killing the village people. With a companion named Chico, who had his own personal grudge with her over the death of his father, they set off to track her down and kill her. Later into the movie, the two get into a shootout with a group of mountain lions. Then suddenly, it turned out these were actually the animals responsible for the many deaths of the villagers, including Chico's father. They are soon followed to the location of where Bagi was hiding, and it turned out Rio and Chico were being used to get to her because the government still wanted that poisonous rice ball Yoko died over. Despite the military might now surrounding her, it was amateur night. The first set of soldiers that went into the lion's den returned to the entrance brainwashed and opened fire on their men still on the ground. Once the ground was wiped out, they then turned the guns on each other. Bagi then comes out and turns her attention to the helicopter holding the government official. She hypnotizes the pilot and sends them crashing into another nearby. Once the last helicopter was destroyed, there was nothing between Rio and Bagi, who was now much dirtier with overgrown hair. Still dead set on believing she killed his mother after everything that transpired, takes out his gun and doesn't ask any questions. As Chico tries to call attention to something around her neck, Rio opens fire on her and she makes a run for it. She briefly disappears before bursting out the ground to pounce on Rio. Unlike the mountain lions from earlier, he wasn't going to get an easy shot on a creature with super agility and could jump from cactus to cactus. After Chico passes Rio his gun, he once again has to deal with Bagi standing in the sun, blinding him. After chomping down the cactus she stood on, she soon returned, carrying burning rubble. She bashes open the gas tank on his motorcycle and blows it up. It distracts Rio long enough for her to charge at him and surround him for one final blow with nothing but his knife. The killing blow was hers, but she restrained herself long enough for Rio to stab her and supposedly kill her. After checking the pendant around Bagi's neck, which used to belong to his mother, he finds a note from her explaining the truth about what happened 5 years ago. He had a grudge all that time, and Bagi was never his mother's killer. He would grieve over her body and continued to hate himself the next day. But the next morning, it turned out Bagi actually survived. She woke up and headed towards the mountains, unlikely to ever interact with another human again. As the credits roll, we see her racing off, finally free to live out the rest of her life. Thank you for watching Furry Girl Profiles episode 100. Please remember to leave the video a like, comment, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. My name is Jawbreaker, and I thank you for watching Playfur Cinema.
Greetings, my good friends. You all undoubtedly have been under the delusion, or shall I say misapprehension, that we of the cartoon animal kingdom are lacking in the finer sensibilities. Now, to disprove this, we shall ask you to forget our form of pranks and playfulness. We ask you in the name of dignity and art to put yourselves in a receptive frame of mind and not to expect of us the foolery and clowning you generally associate us with. And now, to an all-musical program. Thank you.